And I feel so much depends on the weather. So is it raining in your bedroom? And I see that these are the eyes of disarray. So would you even care?
Star Scott Weiland. We're learning more about what happened on his tour bus. Bloomington police just released these photos that investigators took on December 3rd, shortly after Weiland's bandmates found him unresponsive on the bus.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing today? Here I am in Bloomington, Minnesota, just south of Minneapolis, and it's a cold and rainy day. Didn't expect it to be like this today, but I had to wait for the rain to let up because it was coming out hard. And I'm in the parking lot of a Country Inn and Suites by Radisson, and I stayed here last night. I'm gonna show you, right? Show you my room. I left the window open, or the curtains right there, the second window from the right. Can't really see in, but it's just a room. It's just a regular room, and it's a nice hotel. You know, it's got everything you need for the road, but I made a point to stay at this hotel because I wanted to be as close to the location that I'm filming today as possible. I'm making a video today about Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots. Scott Weiland, one of the greatest voices of the 90s and beyond. Stone Temple Pilots, one of the greatest bands of the 90s for sure. I mean, those first 4 albums, Purple, Core, Tiny Songs, and Stone Temple Pilots 4, all are so good. It's just great music. Were they grunge? Were they like glam rock? They're just a rock band, and they were so good. You got a lot of flack at the beginning, and then soon everybody came to realize, no, these guys are the real deal. Now, their lead singer, Scott, if you know Scott Weiland, you know his story. He had massive struggles with alcohol and drug abuse, and I think when we all heard the news, those of us from a certain generation, or people who are just music fans, you don't have to be from that generation. Everyone was upset, but was everybody shocked? I don't know. It's still shocking when somebody dies, especially somebody that you admire, someone whose music you love, or art you love, movies you love. So even if it's maybe if it's expected, or maybe it's, kind of like, of course. It's still shocking. It's still, still sad. And right here behind me, right where I'm standing, exactly where I'm standing, is where his tour bus was parked on December 3rd, 2015, where he was found dead. So right there, that's the Mall of America, right across the street. Now, I'll go through the story a little bit. The tour bus was parked right here with their equipment strapped to the back in a little trailer. Scott had relapsed. He'd been in and out of rehab many times. He had performed with his band, who's now in a band called the Wildabouts, Scott Weiland and the Wildabouts, because he had been fired from Stone Temple Pilots second time. First was for his drug use. Second time was, I believe he announced he was going to do a solo tour of their greatest hits, and the band did not like that. So he was now in a band called, and of course he was in Velvet Revolver as well, which a band I like. I think they had 2 albums, and I have them. You might as well. But I think we all thought of Velvet Revolver as just kind of like a placeholder until Stone Temple Pilots got back together and Guns N' Roses got back together. Still a great band, though. On December 1st, 2015, Scott Weiland and the Wildabouts had played at Adelaide Hall in Toronto, my hometown. Adelaide Hall is not a big venue at all. They were playing some small venues, and here's some footage of that. So that just shows how small the venue was. And then they were supposed to play on December 3rd a show at the Medina Ballroom in the Medina Entertainment Center here in Bloomington, which is a small venue as well. I looked up the capacity. It's about 600 people. Now, this is a guy that was a headliner, arena tours, and you know, it's just strange to think of him playing such small venues. And what's interesting about that venue is they actually canceled. They arrived here in Bloomington, but they had canceled. The venue had canceled on them a few days earlier because of low ticket sales. So they had stopped in Chicago on December 2nd. Scott and the bassist of the band went out drinking. He was his drinking buddy. And then they arrived here early in the morning of December 3rd. So the show was canceled, but they had another show coming up in Rochester, Minnesota, which is about an hour from here. So they checked in here. But of course, with different hours with rock bands and different times, a lot of the band went over to the Mall of America to do some Christmas shopping. And they asked Scott if he wanted to come along. He said no. This is early in the morning. I believe he sent a text message to his wife saying, "I love my beautiful wife." Something to that effect. But around 7 o'clock, when his wife hadn't heard from him, she asked the tour manager to check on him. And then around 8 o'clock, he went into the tour bus and found Scott in the fetal position, eyes half open, stiff, cold. Then they called 911.
A transcript of the 911 call shows what the men told the dispatcher. "I think he's dead. He's not moving. He's stiff," one of them said. The dispatcher tries to give them instructions on chest compressions, but they respond with, "He's stiff. He's hard as a rock, like there's no breath. There's no nothing."
So I came out here last night because it's chilly right now, already getting cold, and I've been here in November, and it's no word of a lie, no colder than I've ever been anywhere, even just in November, colder than Canada, I found. So that tour bus was parked here, and it must have been just a freezing cold night, and bedlam ensued right here. So the bus was right there, and he was pronounced dead at the scene, and it was a mixture of alcohol and cocaine. Like I said, he had struggled for years. There was opiates found on board the bus. The police did a thorough search. They shut this scene down, and they searched the bus. They tore apart everything. Apparently when they left, it looked like, you know, a hurricane had blown through. And the bassist, who was his drinking buddy, when he found out, he ran right to that TGI Fridays and did a lot of shots because that was his way of coping. And then the police arrested him because they found drugs throughout the bus, and they released him, I think, after 17 hours finally, but they didn't charge him because they couldn't prove whose drugs it was. A couple of bags of cocaine, bag of a leafy substance, and many prescription pills.
The next day, as police searched the tour bus, they found 2 clear bags with a white powdery substance in Scott Weiland's bedroom on the bus, and more under the mattress of a bunk bed of a bandmate. That powder tested positive for cocaine.
So it took a full day because there's footage of the bus being towed away. So it must have been quite a while. If it was 9 o'clock at night, roughly, was when he was pronounced dead. And they took the bus that way. There's footage of the bus being taken away and going underneath that walkway there, off, I guess, towards the interstate. But news cameras and reporters and things set up footage right where I'm standing. And I came out here last night and just did a little walk around to show you what it looked like at night. I'll put that in now.
Waiting on a Sunday afternoon for what I read between the lines. your lies.
So here, directly in front of me, is where Scott Weiland passed away. That is heavy. Right there. He was electric on stage with that snake-like body and the way he moved and the way the voice. The voice.
Leaving on a southern train only yesterday, you lied. Promises of what I seem to be, only watch the time go by. All of these things you said to me.
I think it was Chris Cornell who said that it took him a while to come around to Stone Temple Pilots and to accepting them as a band. And once he did, he said that Layne Staley, Kurt Cobain, and Scott Weiland were the greatest voices of that era. That's from Chris Cornell. So I always thought about it, like Scott Weiland just dying on a tour bus on a cold winter's night. What it looked like, what the area was like, and it's just a regular area, really. You know, I'm not sure what that building is, but you know, the Mall of America, there's hotels everywhere, the airport's close. But it's lonely. It's lonely thinking of him on that tour bus alone. I was looking at the various pictures of the bus and those lights in the background, and it's like what I do is match up shots and things like that, but it was just, I don't know. So, you know, Prince, Kurt Cobain, Layne Staley, George Michael, Whitney Houston, all these amazing artists that we've lost, Chris Cornell, many others that we've lost. And Scott Weiland, I think, sometimes gets left behind or left out of the conversation. His ex-wife had said, don't glamorize the death, and don't glamorize that rock and roll lifestyle. And I'm certainly not. And his wife that he was married to said he needs to be in that conversation. He was a fucking icon, and he was. Scott Weiland, man. Nobody... you just think of some of his... Think of the video for Big Bang Baby. The way it was shot in that kind of studio camera style. And he's electric to watch. Electric. It's just amazing. Such a cheap, weird video, and he commands it. He commands the stage. And I actually turned down tickets. I didn't go see them at the Adelaide Hall show. I don't remember why. Scott Weiland, I was a big fan. But I had won tickets once. I won tickets to see Stone Temple Pilots in the 90s. And like an idiot, I gave them away. And I liked Stone Temple Pilots a lot at that time. Not as much as I did later. But I gave them away for whatever reason. I'm thinking I'll see them again. I had something to do that night. I know what it was. I was working on a student film. And I thought, well, no, this is more, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Oh, man, where's that student film now? I don't know. Where's copies of it? I don't know. Where are the memories of me seeing Stone Temple Pilots in the 90s? They're not here. I wish I went. So yeah, I think Scott Weiland to a lot of people is a very, very important figure in rock music. Always the underdog. Always fighting to be, you know, to have his spot as one of the greats. And I think he was. And Stone Temple Pilots themselves, they were great musicians. The band too. But there's no denying who the star of that band was. Usually the frontman becomes the star of any band. sometimes a guitarist, you know. It's usually lead singer, and Scott Weiland was just electric to watch on stage. Scott Weiland did have a funeral, and it was at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. A lot of people asked me to visit his grave, and I've done a video about a couple of videos from Hollywood Forever Cemetery. I got a few more coming still, out in Los Angeles. They had a funeral for him there, and he was not buried there. So a lot of people think that he was, because I think it even says that online, he's buried there. And also online, if you read a lot of stories, they say that he was found in the parking lot of a Courtyard Marriott. That's not true. It's a Country Inn and Suites by Radisson, and it always has been. I don't know where the Marriott is even around.
The group had a performance the next day in Rochester, but their tour bus was parked outside the Country Inn and Suites in Bloomington.
So there's one around here. There's all hotels around here. So a little bit of misinformation, and he was cremated afterwards, and the whereabouts of his cremated remains I'm not too sure about. And then they had a separate funeral for his, I believe, his ex-wife and kids after that. So possibly his kids have his cremated remains. His kids were young, 15, and another younger than that too at the time. And to lose your father at a young age, whether he's a non-rock singer or a rock singer, it's painful. It's hard. So thinking of the Weiland family, and thinking of Scott Weiland. Flies in the Vaseline, we are. Yeah. Interstate Love Song. If you're going on a road trip and Interstate Love Song is not the first song on your playlist, something's wrong. Because it's the best song to drive to, and it's the best road trip song. Interstate Love Song. Trust me, check it out. There's so many hits by Stone Temple Pilots. Find like the essential Stone Temple Pilots, put it on Apple Music. Why am I plugging Apple Music? Or put in your old CDs. Anything. There's so many ways to hear Stone Temple Pilots music, and you'll love them if you don't know them. And if you do know them, you know. If you know, you know. Scott Weiland right here behind me. Very, very sad. And I miss his music. I miss hearing about it. And his exploits. He was always up to something, and always starting something like with a new band, or he's just super talented. And then there's always, again, you'd always hear, so he did this, he did that, some crazy things, but as much as you expected maybe something like this to happen, you never expect it to happen, and you don't want it to happen. Love Scott Weiland, love all of you. Rest in peace, Scott, and peace out.
A painting that my wife painted for me.
Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott.
And I feel it, and she feels it. Where you going tomorrow? Where you going with the mask I found? And I feel when the dogs begin to smell her. Well, she smell alone.